read with me the Thich Nhat Hanh reading number 554, which is in the back of your hymnal. Number 554. Water flows from high in the mountains. Water runs deep in the earth. Miraculously, water comes to us and sustains all life. Water and sun green these plants. When the rain of compassion falls, even a desert becomes an immense green ocean. April 16th, May 11th, June 4th, July 9th. Which one will it be? Day 0. The date on which Cape Town's municipal taps will be switched off, and its 4 million inhabitants begin lining up for their rations of 6 gallons of water a day. One prediction was as early as April 16th, but it's likely now that July 9th will be day 0. The pushing back of the date is a result of a dramatic decline in water usage and the release of 2.5 billion gallons of water from the private reservoirs of farmers into one of the country's dams. According to an article this week in the New Yorker, like every significant problem that Cape Town has faced since the end of apartheid, the water crisis brutally illuminates the extent to which the city remains segregated and unequal. Richer people can insulate themselves somewhat from immediate effects. They can dig boreholes in their gardens, stockpile water in their spare rooms, or hire someone to queue for them in the lines. It's difficult to imagine how a middle-class person might manage in the longer term, but given the challenge, it seems pretty impossible to imagine how a poor person would do it. 6 gallons per person is not enough to keep a household clean and safe in the long term. And an expert epidemiologist is quoted as saying, most people bring up the scenario of dying of thirst. It's not going to happen, she says. What's going to happen is that the population is going to get very ill, a lot of them. Most people who live in Cape Town's townships and informal settlements do not have the means to mitigate the threat that day 0 poses. They'll be obliged to rely on government assistance and to hope that the assistance is more effective than present signs indicate it will be. South Africa has been facing a political crisis, if you've been keeping up with the news, with the resignation of Jacob Zuma of the African National Congress Party. And in the current climate, conspiracy theories about the water emergency have flourished. The New Yorker article says that one ANC legislator suggested that the party's rival, the Democratic Alliance, had manufactured the crisis to justify entering into water desalination contracts with, quote, the Jewish mafia. Funny how we humans always try to wriggle out of responsibility for the mess into which we get ourselves. And even more distressing, how we have divorced our own lives from the reality that there is so much more to existence than our own importance, our own concerns, and our own sense of power in the world. I'd like to call us back into mystery this morning. The mystery of the deep that most of the time is alien to us. That is another world that in the end we cannot conquer. because we will always be at the mercy of forces we can't contain. Tonight is Oscar night, and one of the films that spoke to me this year and that's up for 13 nominations is The Shape of Water. Not only will it be up for Best Film, Best Director, and almost every major acting award, but its screenplay, music, sound, editing, costume, and production design are also nominated. And as much as Day Zero is an actual nightmare, The Shape of Water is a fairy tale romance. The Shape of Water is set in the Cold War era. The main character is a white woman named Eliza. She's a janitor at a top-secret U.S. military research facility. Her friends, Zelda and Giles, are both outcasts in some way. Zelda is a black woman in racially charged America, and Giles is a gay man in a very straight America. The story follows the discovery and capture of another outcast, an amphibious creature who lives in water but can breathe air. And that creature is then observed, tortured, and destined for vivisection in the interests of beating the Russians to find an alien life form on Earth. So Eliza falls in love with the creature, and the time comes when she acts in order to save the one she loves. Jason Brown's review in Pathos says that the theme of the film is clear. Our anthropocentric, greedy Western culture captures and destroys innocent and beautiful nature in a dark, sterile, industrial-looking lab. The subtext being that nature, embodied by this amphibious creature who is worshipped by the Amazonian indigenous peoples of his home place, is valuable only as a dissected object. I won't spoil the ending for you, but I will say that anyone who has seen Guillermo del Toro's other works, like Pan's Labyrinth, knows that this writer and director does not go for soft or naive endings of the sort that so many of us Americans like in our movies. But to quote Jason Brown, I can tell you that Del Toro shows us that the earth can only be pushed so far before she pushes back. So what do these two stories, one true, Day Zero in Cape Town, and one fictional, The Shape of Water, have in common? I think they both carry the message that we must be mindful of and act in humility and courage. We are not the only species on the planet, and our wisdom and knowledge is tempered and hampered by our arrogance and dangerous use of power. Jason Brown notes that The Shape of Water takes a broad swipe at white, male, modernist, Christian stereotypes, as well as our greedy Western culture. The real-life scenario of Cape Town, running out of water, brings the reminder that abundant fresh water was what made the area attractive to European colonizers in the first place. The original name for the area in the indigenous dialect means place of sweet waters. Humility is not our strong suit, and we have much to learn about it from nature. Let's recall the words of John O'Donohue from our meditation, praising the humility of water, always willing to take the shape of whatever otherness holds it. We don't often think of water that way, or about being humble in our lives, and realizing that often there are times and situations that hold us. We don't hold them. Centering down into where we are, calling forth the best of ourselves, may be much more productive at times than struggling against something or depleting our energy in the short term. Humility is also important in recognizing that wisdom lies in the elements of the earth that are not human. The ancient Irish tale of the salmon of knowledge gives us one glimpse of how we can learn from nature. Maybe you've heard of Fionn McCool. He's the hero of this story. He was a giant who realized how slow he actually was in thought and lacking in knowledge. And he followed the advice of a wise man in the village who told him to look in the River Boyne and catch the salmon whose red scales shone through the water, reflecting the sun. Well, there are varying accounts, because it's Irish, of what actually happened when Fionn caught the fish. Some say he felt unwilling to eat such a beautiful creature and he let it go, but in the process of extracting the hook from its lip, he pierced his finger, and the blood from his finger mingled with the salmon's. Other accounts say that he did indeed cook the fish, but couldn't bring himself to eat it, but in cooking he was burnt by the sizzle of the fish. And in either case, where that burn blister grew on his hand or where his blood mingled with the salmon's, the knowledge of the salmon entered into him, and he was afterwards known as a wise leader of the Fenian tribe. Knowledge coming from a salmon. The story is a corrective, at least, to our certainty that humanity has all the answers. But when we think about how clever salmon are, the way that they travel out to the sea and at the right time find their own stream back to spawn, they have a knowledge about life's journey from which we can benefit. The poet David White writes about this in Song for the Salmon. And he writes, "For too many days now I have not written of the sea, nor the rivers, nor the shifting currents we find between the islands. For too many nights now I have not imagined the salmon, threading the dark streams of reflected stars, nor have I dreamt of his longing, nor the lithe swing of his tail toward dawn. I have not given myself to the depth to which he goes, to the cargoes of crystal water cold with salt, nor the enormous plains of ocean swaying beneath the moon. I have not felt the lifted arms of the ocean opening its white hands on the seashore, nor the salted wind, whole and healthy, filling the chest with living air. I have not heard those waves fallen out of heaven onto earth, nor the tumult of sound and the satisfaction of 1,000 miles of ocean giving up its strength on the sand. But now I have spoken of that great sea. The ocean of longing shifts through me. The blessed inner star of navigation moves in the dark sky above, and I am ready, like the young salmon, to leave his river, blessed with hunger, for a great journey on the drawing tide." A journey of leaving takes not only humility, letting go and following the path that leads you to your authentic life, but also takes courage. How many of us are prone to stay in the safe waters, never going out with the tide or risking the unknown? How many of us shun the synchronicity that, if we but only open our hearts, can create channels of possibility to fresh vistas, to new experiences, to larger lives? Remembering John O'Donohue's words from the meditation, that it is our inner voyaging that keeps us alive. We are blessed by our free faith to honor seeking, to encourage wandering, to be open to question and mystery every day of our lives. David White also writes in another poem, All the True Vows, about making your own truth every day with your own body, just like the salmon does. He creates an image in the poem of speaking the truth to the reflection he sees in the water of the lake in the woods. And he says, whatever you hear from the water, remember, it wants you to carry the sound of its truth on your lips. In this place, you'll find what is real and what is not. And he goes on to write, I know what I am saying. Time almost forsook me, and I looked again. Seeing my reflection, I broke a promise and spoke for the first time after all these years in my own voice, before it was too late to turn my face again. It takes courage to speak in our own voices. But as Unitarian Universalists in a covenantal relationship, we can support each other in doing so. We honor the web of all existence by using our voices together to speak out for our planet, for the waters of the earth that can teach us so much and that can help life grow. When I saw Georgella Lyon last month, she signed my copy of her book, All the Water in the World, this way: make a splash. Help save all the water in the world. May we be the ones who make it so. Blessed be. Amen.